Okay, well, welcome everyone. We're going to give it just a couple of minutes here so we can see our participant number quickly skyrocket, which is absolutely amazing. We also know we had a last minute switcheroo on our meeting link, so we want to thank everybody for your flexibility in making that work. We do have someone currently in the other room waiting in case we have some people show up there so that they can redirect participants back here. It's a good problem that we have. We had a capacity of about 500 people to attend this particular session, and we had more than double the interest. And I'm so grateful to Sempra for saying, no questions asked immediately. Let's make sure everyone can be here. So we know there's going to be a lot of people here. I'm going to give you guys a little bit of an overview of like logistically how the next hour is going to play out. So normally I like to start right on time, right with all the content and get you guys engaging. But again, we anticipate a much higher volume than originally. And so I just want to make sure that we allow everyone to get in the room and they don't feel like they're stepping into something that's already started and they missed the most important part, because that's really stressful. So as we're watching those numbers, Randy, if you're okay with it, let me just share a couple like logistical things and then I'll make the reminder again. And then I'm going to turn it over to Randy to get us kicked off. Kicked off. That sounds funny. Not kicked off Zoom. That's probably not the first time I'll put my foot in my mouth, and that one was actually pretty harmless. So I hope you guys are looking forward to having some fun, not making light of the situation that we're in, but actually finding things funny is so helpful. And I actually researched that myself, so I try to practice what I preach. So with that, just for those of you who may be newer to the Zoom webinar platform, there are two things going on from your side that will help me create the best experience once we get into the content. The first is the chat box. And please know that if you put things in the chat box, I will see them, but I won't see all of them as we go through our time together. So I would love you, if you're here with us already, to go to the chat box and just type in a quick note and let me know that you can see me and hear me okay. And I would also love it if you would tell me where you are currently based or where you're located, where your home is located, so I can see where everyone's dialing in from, because that's always really fun for me too. And specifics, I love this. Oh my gosh, they're happening so fast. I see
my
LA,
gosh.
San
Yes,
Diego. Oh my gosh. My
wow.
squirrel brain is like freaking out right now. And this is a perfect example of why I won't be able to keep up with chat more than I've ever had before. I love this so much. And when I go back, I'm going to be able to connect with you more and tell you just how much it means to me to be here. So thanks, you guys. The other side, the other thing that's going to be most helpful is going to be the Q&A box. And please don't go there and type anything yet. But the Q&A box is where I will be able to do my best to answer as many questions as I can. So this morning, we got a lot of email questions. I have them actually up next to me. So I'm going to do my best to cover those, as well as your questions in the Q&A box. So I see a few people have actually raised their hand, and that may have been on purpose or accidental, doesn't really matter. You can lower your hand. I don't want you to feel like I'm ignoring you, but we're not going to be calling on anyone. If you do have a question, and I want to set the tone for this, please make the questions specific to the content we're talking about, and you'll hear more as I do the intro about what we're going to talk about. And as I do that and say, here's what we're going to talk about today in the time that we have, then you can start those questions coming in if you want to make sure your question was answered. We're going to come up with some creative ways to make sure that we do answer all of the questions. It's just that we have a limited time frame. Obviously, this morning, I had to check and see if it was actually still morning. We have a limited time frame this morning, so we're going to come up with a strategy to make sure we can get all of your questions answered. So wonderful. We've given it a couple minutes for people to get here, and I know we're going to have more people signing in. Please continue to let us know where you're dialing in from. And with that, Randy, I'm going to turn it over to you.
All right. Well, this will be great, Heidi, and I will get to turn it back over to you in a moment. But first of all, good morning, everyone. I'm Randy Clark. I'm the Senior Vice President and Chief Human Resources Officer at Sempra Energy. Welcome to this morning's stress management webinar with Dr. Heidi Hanna. Before we get started, I really want to take this opportunity to thank all of you, whether you're working here remotely or you're working actually on site, and really also to thank all the colleagues who aren't able to join us in person for this morning's webinar. The good news is it will be made available so that they can tap into it when they have a chance. And really, thank you for your dedication, your tenacity, and all the effort that you continue to put forth to provide safe and reliable energy to our communities and to support one another during this time. This is also about supporting yourself. So I hope that some of what you hear today is something that you can use, whether for you or the ones you love or the people you're working with. As critical as it is, it's really important in this situation that we continue to do that and focus on supporting ourselves along the way and acknowledge that navigating the situation can be really tough. It is okay to think that. To help with that important goal, we pulled together and we invited Dr. Heidi Hanna, who has definitely supported Sempra in the past, to join us this morning. She's the Chief Energy Officer of Synergy Brain Fitness, a company that provides brain-based health and performance programs to individuals and also to organizations. She's going to talk with us this morning about how to prioritize our health and manage stress. The webinar is recorded and will be made available on SempraNet, Power Up, Gas Lines, and every place in between. Heidi, we really appreciate all the work that you've done with us over the many years, and we welcome you back. We thank you for being here this morning with us, especially with the remote work situation and all the craziness that's on the outside. Thank you for helping us to manage the stress on the inside and support us working across the enterprise. We appreciate it. And now I'm going to disappear and let you run with it.
Oh, but that backdrop is so beautiful. And I know everyone is commenting about that as well here. It's so touching to me to be here, and obviously living in San Diego, you're a big part of my world. I have a dear, dear friend who works with you all, and I got to give her a shout out to Heidi James, and she's been just an amazing, really like first responder in my whole life. She's been such a good friend to me and a support person, and she's one of those people that just leans into crisis, which I love about her. I have recently started a initiative that we're calling a virtual first responder initiative, and that's really based here in San Diego. It came out of an interview that I did last week with a colleague of mine, because we realized that as professionals who've been using these virtual platforms for a long time to train people on things related to stress and mental health and emotional health, we're really now being asked to step up and lean into this situation. And I'll be honest, I don't want to take a lot of time to do this, but I do want to tell you just a little bit about the unique story for me over the last few weeks. And especially, again, because you are based in this area and we share a home together. Not only I'm based in San Diego, but I'm also currently getting a second PhD at Pepperdine at the West LA campus, which comes back into my story. So I'm gonna give you the short version. Just started sharing this actually a week ago today. Can't believe how fast time is going. I actually got sick on February 28th, which I now know because I've had to go back and really chronicle that. I was in Seattle. I was doing a session for Boeing, actually helping them with a stress mastery program specific to their current circumstances over the last couple of years. And I was just really run down. I was going through the normal kind of roller coaster of emotions that I do after a big speaking engagement. And so I had 3 days of time after I got back I had a lot of work to do, but I could tell I could push it off a little bit. So I decided I'd be sick for 3 days, and I hunkered down on the couch and did everything I know to do to get well. And I know this because my background is actually nutrition, exercise physiology, psychology, and neuroscience. So I know what to do to boost my immune function and my mindset. So I did that for 3 days, and apparently it wasn't ready to leave, but I was ready to get on with my life. So I did. Now looking back, I will say that I have a lot of mixed emotions about my experience because I never want to think that I'm hurting someone else by doing my work. But I kept going. I went to class in LA, and it was right before Pepperdine actually went virtual. So we were at the Marina Del Rey Marriott, which I have to also give a shout out to because they were amazing. And we essentially moved in there for 5 days. We didn't come back to San Diego because I had a trip planned to San Francisco to host a brain recharge retreat at Canyon Ranch Woodside. And they had just opened, beautiful property, all of that good stuff. And I was going to be a trooper. So I went and I held the retreat, even though a lot of people had already started to cancel, especially in that area. Fortunately, my research partner actually, who lives in San Francisco, stayed home and he just Zoomed in. So I was there. I was leading online free meditations twice a day, trying to get the message out to people, trying to help people. And they went on essentially shelter in place. So I stayed there for one more day. They were amazing to me. They fed me and kept me safe and comfortable. And then I flew back home. All the while, still really struggling with my own health. So here I am, shockingly 5.5 weeks later, probably have to start saying 6 soon. I can't believe it's been that long. And I'm doing so much better. And I'm so grateful because this morning I felt like even though I still have some congestion and I still have I call it the gremlin that moved into my lungs because that's what it feels like. It just feels like a bad case of asthma now. But some rib pain as well from coughing and things like that. And I feel like I'm getting my life back. And I also feel like I have been training for this my whole life, like an athlete who's now being asked to like step into the big leagues and, really help companies like Sempra figure out how to navigate this new normal. And to keep in mind, by the way, this isn't like a new normal for 2 weeks. We obviously all know that now. This is going to impact people in such a big way for a very long time. And we're going to see that really start to show up in our mental health. I just got some statistics actually this morning that from our International Brain Health and Performance Database, we actually have the world's largest standardized database of brain research. We're seeing the statistics now of what's happened over the last 3 weeks with regards to anxiety, stress, cognitive function, focus, attention, a lot of different factors. And so I'll be starting to share that. And I had just talked to Jill and Kristen that as I start doing more speaking out about the trends we're seeing and the data that we're collecting, I'll make sure to keep you guys in the loop so that you can be informed as well. And of course, always do the best I can to show up and support you with content that I think will be helpful. So on that note, I'm going to pull up my slides, and then I want to kind of lay out for you how we're going to do this session together today. I talked with Randy ahead of time and we agreed that we want to, give you guys some good content, some good information, but also create some space for the questions that you're asking. So my plan is to talk for about 30 minutes and then to shift over to the questions. Q&A is always my favorite because I like making sure that what I'm saying is really relevant to you. So again, please keep in mind that even though we won't get, I'm not even going to say we will not get to all the questions that you have, and more questions are going to be coming, that I see myself as a virtual first responder working with you all to help you as you navigate this new normal. And with that, obviously help your families and our collective community. Makes me emotional to think about that because I'm really, really delighted to be working with you guys. We'll also make sure that you have the slides. I'm not going to spend too much time. Randy already gave you my background. Just the 2 pieces I would add in there that are really interesting right now is that I'm a researcher with a group called the Brain Health Initiative. We actually just started officially within the last year, but we've been working on this for many years. And that's with collaborators at Harvard, Harvard Medical School, and Mass General Hospital. So we're actually already looking at brain health and performance within a community structure. The community we're working with is actually in Sarasota, Florida, which is a bummer for me because I was trying so hard to get them to do it in San Diego. I'm the only one in San Diego. The rest of my team is actually in Boston or in Sarasota. So really exciting, and we're leaning into what's happening right now and actually looking at the neurological impact of COVID-19. We're also looking at mindset and how that impacts people's resilience and their health outcomes. We're looking at things even like gratitude, positivity, the things that we often talk about, but we're also looking at humor, strategic use of humor. I'm studying the humor trends, which has been really interesting. So what are people finding funny 3 weeks ago versus what are they going to find funny 3 weeks from now? So really interesting practical tools. And that's what's most important to me, is not that we just look at trends. I mean, if I tell you that stress and anxiety and depression have skyrocketed, that's not going to surprise you. But what we'll probably see is that there is a timing element. So initially stress and anxiety is going to peak, and we'll see the impact of that on focus and attention and even social capacity and things like that. But then we'll start to look at them together. Like, when does that happen? When does depression start to increase? Because we know that with intense stress, or stress that continues for too long, there's literally an imprint on the human brain that changes the way that the brain processes information. That's my sweet spot. That's what I love to study. So I'm going to talk about it a little bit today, just to help you understand why that's happening, how that's happening. But most important, what does it mean for the way you kind of look at your current circumstances, and how do you really be prepared for what's coming from a mindset perspective? I had a great opportunity yesterday to interview a friend of mine who is really a leading expert in disaster recovery and preparedness. We were talking about this, and this is someone, by the way, who's run business continuity planning and a lot of different things for companies like Amazon and Sony and Walgreens, and he puts these programs together for these companies. And what was so fascinating to me was, without even talking about it, as we started talking about like the 4 steps to really, managing situations like this, he talked almost the majority of the time about how important mindset is. And it doesn't mean that you don't need your disaster kit, or you don't need the practical logistical things, which, by the way, you guys are at the forefront of helping our community know what we need in times of trauma and crisis and disaster. And by the way, I've so been impressed with the way that you navigate all of that as someone, looking from the outside in. But it's more than that. Do you know how to use it? Is your brain online when you need your conscious, logical, rational judgment to take over when the trauma hits and we're hijacked from that part of our brain and we're working more primitively? How do we get more access to what we know? Because we know knowledge is only really helpful if it actually becomes wisdom, and now we just move quickly. And that was one thing I'll share with you. And by the way, I'm going to tell you guys all how you can see the recording of that and all the sessions that I'm doing right now with these thought leaders. The thing he said is always the critical difference, is how quickly we move someone from an awareness of what's going on to taking action. It's in the gap where we have the awareness and then the brain does like, oh no, this is bad, and then cycles into negativity bias and cynicism and fear and all of that. It's not that feeling those things are bad, but cycling or spiraling in them is harmful. And I have a million examples I could use about that in my own life and in the lives of others. But if you could just be keeping that in mind, that what we want to talk about today is, how do we navigate this from a mindset perspective? What could we be doing? And then as we kind of move forward, we can certainly talk about some of these components for proactively building your brain fitness. So if you think about the brain as being like a muscle, you need it to be healthy and strong, because there's actual neurons, there's cells in there that need the nourishment that they need to be strong. But then you also need that brain cell to connect with this brain cell so that the message gets across and that you take action in an appropriate way. So the fitness component is, am I strong, and am I able to use my brain to move me in the direction that I choose? And a lot of the work I do in mental health, especially with my college students and high school students, and a new program I'm launching with them called Brain Boss, is we teach them how to be the boss of your own brain, so it stops hijacking you and making you do things where you kind of go, well, that was weird. I wanted to be patient, loving, and kind, but I was kind of a jerk to my husband or partner or friend or colleague or whatever. And what's going on there? And we can take a step back and we can actually create new circuits in the brain so that we can be more intentional. So the goal is proactively, how do we develop those capacities? And then reactively, in the moment, we can lean into those. So that's an exciting piece. I mentioned the virtual first responder program that we're doing. So there's a lot of stuff coming, and you will be on, the front lines of learning as I learn, and I'm able to share with your team there. So if we had more time, I'd go into detail on all of these, but this is what I want to just walk us through, is essentially understanding this massive gap between what we know and what we do. We won't spend too much time there. And then the 3-step stress mastery formula or process that I like to walk people through, which is to assess, appreciate, and adjust. And really important differentiation here between stress management and stress mastery. May not seem like a big deal, but stress management, the solutions we tend to use is like pushing stress around and trying to manage our time and trying to manage things better. But stress mastery actually uses stress as it is designed. So our stress reactions are purposeful and helpful until they become harmful. So what we want to do is catch it in the beginning and be able to say, okay, what's going on? Where's this coming from? What's really the information I need? And then be able to appreciate that stress is trying to help us before we adjust it. And we strategically use the stress. And that may sound like really lofty. And certainly when we're in the midst of a trauma, we're not, saying, oh, I'm grateful for this. It's not what I'm talking about. But by appreciating that our stress reactions are trying to help us and just kind of taking a step back for a very quick pause, we allow the neurochemistry and the neural circuitry to shift to make a better choice. So if we have time, I'm going to give you a specific example of a time I literally just did this a couple of days ago, and it was so helpful because it was really practical to get me out of a situation that I was actually feeling traumatized by, that was out of my control. Because so much of this has to do with control. When we feel like we can do something to make a difference, we're able to navigate that better. When something's happening to us, disaster, crisis, pandemic, job circumstances. I mean, we know a lot of people, and I hate to bring this up because it's scary, but it's true. A lot of people are losing their jobs. A lot of people are going on furlough for a while. Other people have more on their plates than they know what to do with. And so there's an adjustment that's happening. But when something's happening to you and you don't feel like you have control, stress acts differently in your brain and body. So what we want to do is not to pretend like we have control, but make the shift to appreciate, so say, what's really going on? I appreciate that a lot of this is because I don't feel like I have control. And the adjust is one small step that we can do to take action. And by the way, it doesn't even have to be about the thing that's stressing you out. So let me give you a really good example of this for those of you who have children. It's one of the most impactful things that I've learned is that kids who are dealing with bullying obviously are not in control of that situation. They could certainly tell an adult and try to get some help, but they're still not in control of whether or not that's going to happen. And what we've seen is that with those students, even really, really young, if number one, they feel like they have what we would call a charismatic adult. So some adult figure in their life who can be their champion. Doesn't have to even be a parent. I don't have my own kids. I have a niece and nephew, and actually I have 4 grandchildren now, which I know will surprise some of you. Much longer story. But I'm that in their life. So as long as they know they've got a person who can champion for them, then the second thing is they have to know their actions matter. So again, not related to the bully. If they go help another child, volunteer, write a thank you card to a teacher, if they do something that takes action that actually then lifts them up and hopefully serves someone else in the meantime, they see that their life is not out of control. One factor is out of their control. So we can take that again and apply it to our life and say, what feels out of control and what can I control that may not solve the situation. Like, we're not solving this right now. I hope everyone, I mean, I know you know that. But a lot of times when we talk about this, the expectation is, well, we're going to fix all of our problems, and here's what's happening with my boss, and here's what's happening in my life, and all these things out of my control, out of my control. And the brain and the nervous system just checks out. It's not going to help you in those situations. So if we can, at least for just a moment, put that to the side and say, everyone's doing the best we can to navigate this new normal. Let's look at that as we become more resilient and we work through some of these things. And we're not going to ignore that that's a problem, but we're going to, again, build our brain capacity, build our resources so that we can make the adjustments and that those will happen over time. We just have to give it a little bit of time. So I do want to mention that our challenges with stress are not new. So this was all happening before COVID-19. 75 to 90% of medical visits are considered to be stress related. Anxiety is now the most common mental health problem. It is by far the most common in college students. We're seeing an increase there, which is why I'm doing the college program. We also know, unfortunately, that suicide is the number 2 cause of death for college students. We have seen a massive rise of that with our veterans, which actually that gets a lot of attention. We know that approximately 22 vets every day take their own life. We now know the statistics for physicians is more than that, which just always makes me pause for a second. Anything we can do to support our healthcare providers right now is really important. They are obviously giving a lot of themselves, and there's a lot of reasons, we could go into about why that is as high as it is, but it's important to know. And then depression is actually the leading cause of disability in the workplace. And a lot of that is this cycle. So we go up, we have stress, we have anxiety, we do the best we can, and we take care of business and we push through. And then the depression is what happens as a natural kind of rebound effect because of how the brain is actually changing. So there's no question that we know what we should be doing and that there is this gap between what we know and we do. There's nothing I'm going to suggest to you here today that you're going to say, I've never heard that before. The key is to identify how we take action on those things. And there's a couple quick things I'll just mention here on that. We have to keep it simple. We have to find things that are in our control that we can take action on. We want to take action quickly. When we take even what I call imperfect action, and we do something with the energy of stress and stimulation, we change the brain and the body immediately. So now we go from this chronic threat type situation. I'm going to show you here in the next slide exactly what's happening when we feel that way. And we go into an acute challenge situation. And so there's a mindset piece of that, but there's also something dramatic that happens when we take imperfect action, when we just do something, even if it's not related to the stressor. So there's 2 primary types of stress. And again, I want you to think about this from a physiological body point of view and a psychological mind point of view. And the body is what you see there, the first word, acute or chronic, and the mind is challenge or threat, because both of these impact each other. And by the way, you can't outthink your body when it comes to activating stress reactions. We really actually work the other way around. We have to get the body into a more calm state so that we can get the mind in a more quiet and focused frame of reference. This is the brain recharge technique that I teach, which is really simple, and I'll try to make sure we do that briefly. I won't be able to walk you through it, but I'll tell you what it is, and then I've got lots of resources that you can use to actually practice recharging your own brain. So these 2 types of stress, acute stress is in the moment, lasts about 30 minutes or less if there's actually an emergency. So if a fire alarm is going off in the building and I need to run outside, this is a great thing to have. We have more adrenaline, heart rate, blood pressure, immune function, memory, focus, attention, and a sensitivity to the stress. So something really needs to be fixed, and we have this boost of our brain power and our capacity. The challenge is it only lasts for about 30 minutes. So if we don't take some sort of action, again, not that we have to resolve the whole situation, but we need to mobilize in some way. If that doesn't happen, it turns into more of a chronic situation. And again, this isn't like you just think about it differently and it changes. It's these systems. There's a fast system and a slow system when it comes to our stress reactions. The system changes whether you want it to or not. So, as I said, well, I'm going to push through and power through being sick. My mind was great. Like I was fired up. My spiritual energy was high. I'm going to go out and help people. My body was like, I don't care what you tell me right now. You are going to be tired, be more sick. You're going to get headaches, backaches, stomach aches. You're not going to be able to pay attention. So try as hard as you want. We don't have the resources for that right now. And we don't know how long this is going to last. So that's essentially what happens. And that's where the problems come. The problem isn't from stress that's acute. The problem is from stress that's chronic. And ultimately, part of this does have to do with mindset, because if we can train a stress mastery mindset, then we can start to see that even the threatening situations, we can handle them, right? So if you've been through an actual trauma and gotten through it, and even if there was damage as a result, once your system learns that you can handle it and life does go on, you are better as a result. It's positive adaptability. Instead of just being resilient, which I don't like that word. Resilient is going back to where you were before. Positively adaptable or pro-adaptability is being better than you were before as a result of what you went through. So one of the best examples I can think of is a local group, although they do global work, called Challenged Athletes Foundation. And I've been working with them for many years. And they have a lot of these individuals who have an injury or a trauma. There's a lot of vets who are involved, but also, babies who are born with a physical disability or limitation. So they raise money to get prosthesis for these athletes. And many of them weren't even athletes before, but they become athletes because they realize that if they have a focus, a mission, and a purpose, they have a reason for getting healthier and getting stronger, and they really thrive. And I've literally talked to people. I talked to one kid who was a quarterback at UCLA, lost his leg in a motorcycle accident. It wasn't soon after that I met him, and he was sharing his story. And again, I don't want to minimize what people go through because everyone has a different experience. And for many of us, it takes longer to get to this point. I mean, I know for me, it would take me longer to get to this point of just needing to grieve and walk through that and work through that. But he felt his life was better after his accident because he felt like what he was doing now really was sharing hope and healing for people, where before he was competing in sports. And so we don't want trauma to happen, but I want everyone to know that, we have a ton of data about what we call post-traumatic stress growth. And it does happen. And there are certain factors, and they're the things I'm going to tell you about right now that make that difference. So I want to get to what I would call stress solutions. These are the stress mastery things that we want to be thinking about and navigating to do this better. I'm going to go through these really quickly so I can answer your questions. And again, I want to say that most of these are common sense. They're not common practice. So they're common sense, but not common practice. And you'll see what I mean as we go through them. So there's 5 core factors. I call them my Fab 5. I got to slow down. I want to give you guys so much information that my words are going to start to mumble together. The Fab 5 is eat, move, sleep, rest, and connect. I'm sure you know that these are good for your health and your happiness and your performance. Let me just cover a couple of points on each of these and then provide additional resources for the rest. So when it comes to what we eat, obviously that is literally fuel for our body and our brain. And so research has validated for a long time that an anti-inflammatory diet is the best way to go. And there's a lot of versions of them out there. We could spend all day talking about pros and cons of all the different diets and fast and intermittent fasting and all that kind of stuff. It really needs to be personalized, but the basics are eat primarily plants. You can also eat lean protein. You want some protein, have complex carbohydrates, and easiest thing to do, just look up anti-inflammatory diet and it will show you exactly what you want to be focusing on, especially in periods of stress. The more produce we can get, the more vegetables, fruits, also things like really complex grains are going to help us. We need the fiber to help keep everything flowing through our system. But we also need those antioxidants because stress is oxidating. It's causing more wear and tear. And the free radicals, the oxidation that happens in our system can be decreased and nourished and healed essentially by these plant-based foods. But the other thing is how we eat. So eating mindfully, eating calmly. So now we're virtual, which suddenly makes everyone feel like we can get more done in less time. And so we've got all sorts of things coming at us and it's so tempting. In fact, I probably shouldn't show you this, but I have a banana next to me that I was going to eat before we got started. And we had the little switcheroo going on, trying to get everything moved. So I still have it there, but I choose in this case not to sit in front of the desk and do my work and have my snack. In fact, I'm going to just go outside and sit for 5 minutes and have a snack, do some deep breathing, because what happens is when we're stressed and we eat food, you don't get the benefit of those nutrients the same as you would if you were calm. Now, I could have a super stressed day, so I'm not saying my whole day is going to be calm, but what I'm saying is just a couple minutes before you eat of doing some breathing, listen to some music, go for a short walk, get some time in nature if you can, all of these common sense things, but do those to shift your state so that when you do eat, you're going to actually utilize the food that you're eating more effectively. So really focus on that, is how are you eating? Second thing is to move often. So lots of different ways you can exercise. The most important thing, especially right now, is just that you're moving. It doesn't have to be intense physical exercise, although we know that if you're able to do some high intensity cardiovascular exercise, that's probably the best thing for your brain. It's actually like getting the top 5 pharmaceutical drugs all at once without any of the side effects. Whole presentation just on that. And again, I'll share where you guys can get more information. But the key right now is move often, because again, we're sitting, we're virtual, we're looking at screens. One of the best investments I've made over the last few weeks actually happened before all of this started, was a standing desk. It's not that expensive. I just, pull the levers on the side, the thing goes up. And so I could be here presenting to you standing, or I could do that sitting. So that helps with movement. If you're doing a call, just because we can look at each other virtually doesn't mean we have to. So get on a call, put on a headset and walk. We had people in our condo actually walking laps around the pool area on the pool deck, just to get some of that movement and to get outside. So we want to be creative with how we're doing this. It will not surprise you that I have to talk about sleep. Again, not going to spend too much time on it. I have an amazing friend, Dr. Michael Bruce, who is actually the sleep doctor, and he's got some great resources. He and I are actually going to do a segment together for our Global Stress Summit, which is going to take place on April 18th. We'll make sure you guys all get the information. Simply put, don't go here now. It's globalstresssummit.com, but we're updating that. So when I keep saying we've got more resources, I'm pulling together thought leaders, scientists, and actually people with really big hearts who I know and trust that their information is the best. And so we're going to be actually making that free for everyone for all time. You can go get it. You don't have to do any backflips or anything like that to get access. So we'll have that there. But the key for this is most people need 7 to 8 hours of sleep. And the challenge right now with sleep is not that we don't know we need it, but when we're getting constantly stimulated, especially with technology like this, it frazzles our nervous system. So we need to take more breaks. We need to try to turn screens off. We need natural light. And then there's some techniques you can use certainly to try to improve your sleep, but that's the main one. We have to unplug. And in fact, that's the next thing that I want to mention, is to unplug strategically. So normally what I'm talking about here is just taking more breaks. But I also want to add, especially in the time that we're in right now that we need to unplug digitally. We need to give our brains a break from the stimulation. And it's not just, I'm not saying get a blue light blocker. That's not enough. We actually need to, I should have put, speaking of which, I need to move my phone. It's on vibrate, by the way, but I always put my phone on airplane mode so that no one can reach me when I really need to be fully focused. And I would recommend that to you as well, because silent doesn't really mean silent. Silent means now my phone is vibrating on my desk and I can feel it. So that's another one of those things, like unplug, go on airplane mode. It's not just the technology from the perspective of, electromagnetic fields and all that kind of stuff. That's there's some interesting things about it, but let's do the core things first. The first thing is it's also the information, and the brain is literally addicted to new novel information, especially if it's related to a trauma. And marketers know this, the news, the media, as much as I love them and try to support them the best I can, they know this. So it's constant updates. And I don't know if you guys have realized this, but most of the updates are not new in a given day, let alone day to day. Now, I'm not saying we don't watch it, but what is your, I would call it digital diet. So what's the quantity and quality of the information that you're getting, and pay attention to both of those. I will say right now I'm on about a 15-minute a day. And a lot of that is because my nervous system is stimulated enough and I'm getting enough information on that. I also have other people who love being connected to the news. Heidi James is one of those people. And I got to tell you, if something is going on in this world and I need to know about it, she will let me know. That's probably stressful for her to now feel responsible for my well-being, but she's one of those people. And so it's helpful to know who's in the know and on what different things can they assist you. And on that note, really ties in perfectly to number 5, which is how are we connecting? So just because we have to physically distance does not mean that we are socially distancing. And I hope that more people will start talking about this. I am honestly more socially connected right now than I've ever been in my life, because I am working with other people with a common focus and a strategy to say, how do we help serve others? And there is nothing that is better for the brain than connecting with people around a purpose and a mission. In fact, one of my mentors, who unfortunately passed away earlier this year, Bruce McEwen, pioneered so much of this research around stress in the brain. And one of the things that his lab found was that when we have essentially a brain in a petri dish, right? So we can create these interesting little petri dishes with brain cells and they function and communicate together. If you put cortisol in the mix, which is the chronic stress hormone, it will actually kill brain cells, not only the cell, but the communication between them. That's why we need to get out of chronic stress state back to acute and take action. Now, that's not to stress out about, because then that's going to be bad for your brain. So just file that away. Okay, chronic stress, especially when I feel out of control and I focus and I spiral on that, is literally killing brain cells and destroying the connections between them. It's going to atrophy your brain. So the other option is you add another chemical. And in this case, there's another chemical called oxytocin, which is a bonding chemical in the brain that we release when we feel socially connected. Now, you don't get more of that by having more Facebook friends. You don't have more of that by having more Zoom happy hours. You have more of that by feeling connected. So you could have one very strong, supportive person in your life, and that's enough. You could have a handful of friends that you see once a year. My best friends from Orlando, when I lived there for 10 years, they were texting me this morning. They want to do a Zoom happy hour this weekend. It's perfect. I can't wait. And then suddenly I realized my husband's birthday is on Sunday. So I quickly texted his 3 and said, when are we going to get together and do this? And I have a couple other surprises for him. I'm not going to say right now, but I never would have had that opportunity. We would have probably gone to dinner, walked on the beach and, called home. But now we're getting a chance to have these like meaningful, purposeful conversations. And that said, we can't do it all the time or we're going to wear ourselves out. So I just want to end on this, and then I'm going to give you some practical pointers and I'm going to go to the questions. Remember, common sense is not common practice. And here's a great example from our own hometown of a place where people will get onto an escalator and go to the gym and then pay money to get on a stair stepper, which is crazy to me, right? I actually stood here and for about 30 minutes with this colleague of mine, we were watching, and not a single person took the stairs. And it's not that the escalator was there for people who weren't able to elevate themselves, because they all went and worked out. So the reality is that when the brain sees change or has to exert energy, it wants to conserve that. So it's going to choose the easier route, but that's not always the best route. It is when you need it, short term. But longer term, we want to be thinking about how do we make choices that we know are going to actually help us navigate life better, be healthier, be happier, and all of that, and impact others in a better way. Because I will tell you, nothing is more contagious than stress, not even COVID. You can get stressed through a text message, an email, a phone call, a passing glance. We've all had those experiences before, and someone could walk in the room and you just instantly feel stressed, right? But the same can happen with someone who is calm, confident, curious, someone who is a good listener to you, and so you feel supported and connected, or even someone who finds things funny and says, hey, I saw something funny, not harmful humor, but healthy, supportive humor. There's so much good humor going around right now. It is not hard to find, but if you do need help finding it, we'll make sure that I share with you a website that I have cultivated some that I think is healthy and appropriate for people. So the last thing I'll say about this, if you take nothing else away, is think about your brain and your body as it is a battery for your cell phone. And think about how you feel if your cell phone battery were to be at 5% and then 3% and then 1%. Might be stressing you out now thinking about it. And then imagine that your brain and your body are doing the same thing. They're giving you signs and signals all day long with the headache, the tension, the backache, the stomach ache, too hungry, not hungry enough, too tired, not able to fall asleep. All of those things are your brain saying we need a new normal, but we don't pay attention. We push through it. And I would say probably even more than the physical, pay attention to the emotional. I wake up, I want to be patient, loving, and kind. And when I snap at somebody, it's always because I'm trying to do too much at once. I'm not taking care of myself. I'm not getting breaks. I'm not recharging my own battery. So the 3 things to keep in mind are plug into something in the morning that matters to you. Please do not grab your phone and check your messages or turn on the news or anything that has the potential to overstimulate you. And obviously, most of the information we're consuming right now is stress-inducing. So just create a pause. It doesn't mean that you can't access it, but what could you do first to prime your brain to have the capacity to receive that new information in a new way? So there's so many things. And in fact, I would love to share, I don't think we've done this before. I have a book called Recharge that has all the strategies for all these different dimensions. And we'll make sure you get the link to that. So again, don't go do this now, but at my website, it's HeidiHanna.com. And if you put /recharge, it will take you to a place where you can just easily download that for free as a PDF. You can also buy the print version if you want. I think it's like $9.99 or something, but honestly, just take the book, and you can also share it with other people. There's one other website I will show you here that also has some practical tools like guided meditation, funny videos, also has an energy audit. You can look at the timeline of your day and see where you need to have some more recharge breaks. So that will be on this last slide that I'm about to put up. Unplug before you go to bed. So really think about an hour before you go to bed. How are you going to turn off all the noise of the day and start to plug in to purpose, compassion, self-compassion, especially kindness. You can use songs, you can use funny videos, having conversation with people, ask other people what they feel grateful for, or ask them what they find funny, and you shift your perspective. And then of course, these recharge breaks. So an ideal day to me, you would plug in with a ritual 15 to 20 minutes, you would unplug with something 15 to 20 minutes, and allow yourself to really prime your brain in the morning for the day and at night for the sleep. And then during the day, 3 to 5 strategic recharge breaks that you literally plug into your calendar. And you can make them around meals, but make them in addition to the meal. The meal is not your recharge break. Your recharge break is what you do before the meal to make sure you're digesting food in the best way possible. And so those are some really practical things. And again, you can go to my website, or you can go to rechargetoolkit.com, and that's where you'll get free access to all the videos and tools. And I'm just added a bunch that I did for my beach brain study with Reef. So there's some new guided meditations and images. There's an essential oil. There's actually 3 different essential oil recipes for blends you can make. We're in the process of making them now so people can buy them because we're getting so many requests, but you can just do them at home if you like that. And I will say before I take questions, that's my number one go-to is essential oils. And it's because when you smell the essence of something, the smell cues the non-conscious part of the brain into a new state. So the blends that I made are actually designed to mimic the sand, the surf, and the sun experience. So the sand being more grounding, the surf being more kind of flexible and fluid, and the sun really being uplifting and helping with focus and attention. So you could just use one. If you like essential oils, I'm happy to share with you guys kind of, you'll see in the recipes the types of oils that do those different things. And again, there's more information there for you. So let me, for sake of time, I'm going to end in 5 minutes so that Randy has a chance to come back and make some closing comments. I'm going to go first to the 2 that I received on email, and then we'll see. I know there were more coming in, by the way. Just know that this is all I had before I was able to get logged in. So I think this one from John, I'm just to mention first name, especially if it's common. So this one's from John. It's also my husband's name. Mentions being an introvert. I'm also an introvert, so I feel you on that one. So staying home is fine, but it does cause a lot of stress, and you're not used to being stressed in your own home, and I get that too. So I think a lot of what we talked about will hopefully help you, but I'll say specifically to working from home, I've actually been asked by LinkedIn Learning to create a short course on this, is to try to create space, even if it's small. You can live in a small space, but try to find at least an area that is for work that you can walk away from, and hopefully not in eyesight of your recharge space and your home space. So setting healthy boundaries, however you can do that. If you can have a dedicated room, great. Actually take the time to make it what you need it to be. So this is the 5th iteration of trying to figure out where I want to be, in what room. We actually left downtown and came to my mom's condo. She's living in Idaho right now, but she has a condo out in Del Sur area. And we came here because it's on the ground. And the condo downtown, I'm on the 24th floor in a high rise. And we're actually getting ready to move out of that building specifically for this reason, because being up that high, anytime any motion happens, wind, especially an earthquake, I freak out. It re-traumatizes me from some trauma I've had earlier in my life. So that's why, suddenly we had to make the shift. But I'll tell you, when we did that this week, I went quickly to my essential oils. Then I realized I know someone in the news who may know what's going on. So I texted him and asked him what was going on. Turns out there was people rioting about something, but they were laying on their horns for 30 minutes. And I was sick. I was overstimulated. I was up high in the air. All of that was too much. So I texted him. So once my brain came back online, because I was breathing, my 3-step process is breathe, feel, focus. So I was breathing. I was feeling a positive emotion as I was using the essential oils and focusing on what I was grateful for in the moment. And then I was focusing on what could I do differently? What do I have control of? And the only thing I knew at the moment was text my friend Jake. And I did. And he responded right back. Once he figured it out, he said, here's what's going on. Here's what it's about. Now I had new information that could calm me down, that they weren't actually going to bomb the building or do something violent. They were making a point. And then I adjusted my environment to be more soothing, and we ended up actually leaving our home temporarily. So I realize not everyone has the flexibility to do that, but take the time to actually set up your space. And you'll see here, I have nature. I have a nature picture. I have a plant in here. I have something that says love. I have a globe. I just put little details that for me remind me to take care of myself and do the best I can. And I'll say there's construction literally going on outside my window. So it's not an ideal situation. It's not even my home, but I took this space and said, this space I'm going to take control of and make it the best I can. So here's one more, and that's going to be all we have time for. So all of your questions, all of your chat will become a file for me, so I'll be able to look at it and respond. So again, please just be patient with me and know that this is a priority for me. I'll get to them over the weekend while still taking care of myself. This other question I think is really important. There are new hurdles coming at us every day. And how do we do that, especially with other employees, maybe let's call them bosses or managers, who feel like they're either micromanaging us or they're constantly connecting with us. And, the best thing I can say about that is when we get this feedback, I like to be able to help your leadership team navigate this more effectively. And so we will have conversations about that as a follow-up to the questions we're receiving here and say, now, how do we do the best we can with what we can control? Let me give you an example. I worked with another utilities company actually in Detroit, so I'm sure you're familiar with who they are, built a whole wellness program for them. And one of the comments that came from them was, everyone's saying to take the stairs. Well, our stairs are dirty and dangerous, and we don't want to take the stairs. Now, I got probably 500 other complaints from people, but that was the one we could do something about. And so we actually took a ton of time and energy and resources, and we made safer staircases that were clean and they were maintained. And we even put some inspirational messaging. And what was amazing to me is that the employees felt heard. We weren't able to do everything. And I'm telling you right now, we're not going to be able to solve everything. There were issues before, there are going to be issues later. But what we do want to do is figure out in this new space, what are the high priority items? And what I mean is not it's priority for the people, really legitimately. And I know you have a team here that would echo that with me. And Randy's going to come back with us here in a minute, and I'm sure he can share that. But what are the small steps we could take that will have the biggest impact? How do we make sure everyone feels heard? And then we need you to also give us enough patience to know we're hearing you, we're doing our best, and we're going to implement those types of things as quickly as we can. So I think that is the key, is that we all need to practice self-compassion for ourselves. And the more you practice self-compassion for yourself, I can say this 100% through research and experience, the kinder you are to yourself, the more you build your own capacity to then share compassion and patience and love and kindness to those you work with, to your family members, to the greater community. And I will start crying like a little baby if I talk about this anymore, but I have to tell you, we have never needed it more than we do right now. So as much as you can, focus on what you can control, do what you can to take care of yourself. Know we're going to help you the best that we can, and then do something kind for somebody else. And again, it could be all those small things. Write a thank you card, send a positive note, send a funny video, offer to do something for somebody who may not have as much as you have. And you'll notice a quick shift fast start to happen as we all work on this and really become better together. So Randy, I'm going to turn it back over to you for some closing thoughts.
Oh gosh, Heidi, again, thank you so much for being with us today. I hope that everyone found at least one great thing to take away from that. I know I found it to be phenomenally useful. So many things. I'm going to work really hard this weekend. I'm going to make sure that I am taking control of my own brain. And I'm definitely going to be making sure that I'm creating my own recharge toolkit. We are all so fortunate to, frankly, be at a company where we're all gainfully employed and being productive, albeit in interesting spaces that we may be creating for ourselves or out in a world that's throwing a whole lot at us. But I really want to thank you, Heidi. And again, thanks to everybody that's actually been able to join us today. Heidi will also be joining us for a Sempra online chat session. We'll be posting that across the family of companies on the internet site. So please be on the lookout for that. I'll just close by saying, on behalf of the entire senior leadership team at Sempra and on behalf of all of our operating companies, thank you for all that you're doing. Heidi, thank you for helping us to recharge our batteries. And I look forward to connecting again in the future. Have a great day, everybody. Happy Friday.
Thanks, everyone.